Hello everyone and welcome to What Could Have Been. In this series we'll be discussing the missed opportunities of certain stories and characters and how they could be improved. This series was inspired by Fourth Snake's Wasted Potential, the Fire Brothers' Wasted Potential series, and What If I Survived by Trans Theories. Ever since I've seen those videos, I've wanted to do my own similar series where I cover the changes I'd make to fix a character and an entire plot of a movie, show, or game. I have plenty of other video ideas for this series planned, so I hope this first one is going to be successful. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really like Dominion. I've been gradually starting to dislike the previous Jurassic World films more and more, and now I'm just at a point where I feel like the Jurassic Park films just got progressively worse with each sequel. I don't want to delve too much into it, but most of my problems arise with it being overstuffed, practically ignoring the story of dinosaurs affecting the mainland and focusing on locusts, which I guess kinda shows that they were very insecure about the mainland plot. You literally took a concept from the books with the Procompsognathus, and you now have it on a greater scale with a wider variety of prehistoric animals, and you barely do anything with it, and when you do something, you act like both the dinosaurs and the modern-day animals would coexist in near-perfect harmony. Did you forget what the Burmese pythons are doing in Florida? I also lost any respect I had for Trevorrow with this movie. I liked his original script for Star Wars Episode 9, but after seeing Dominion, I don't want him working on any other project involving dinosaurs or animals from any time period. Just reading about him being stuck when he found out that the Therizinosaurus was a herbivore made me lose it. If you don't know how to make a herbivore threatening, then please stay away from projects like this. At least I can say that I did like seeing the original cast, and that the Therizinosaurus scene was easily the best part in the whole movie. I don't know if much can be done to fully save the writing in this film, since the groundwork laid out for it was dependent on the stupidity of the characters from World and Fallen Kingdom, and the writing in this movie just gets progressively worse. Much worse. But if there's at least one thing that might be easy to fix, it would be the portrayal of the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus. And it doesn't just involve changing the Giga's design. The Giganotosaurus was meant to be this franchise's next top predator after Spinosaurus, Indominus Rex, and Indoraptor before it. While the Giga was never physically present in the fourth film, its DNA was apparently used for the Indominus Rex, along with T-Rex, Velociraptor, Therizinosaurus, and surprisingly 3 Abelisaurids in Jurassic World. There was concept art of it for Fallen Kingdom indicating that it was originally going to appear, but it ended up being cut. It finally has a more prominent presence in Dominion, but unfortunately it's given shit treatment. Not only is it given a bad design, mainly having that god-awful hump or raised up spikes on its back that ruins it for me, it is also severely underutilized. It would make the Indoraptor blush with how wasted it was. And for all the director's statements on how he wanted it to be like the Joker, going so far as to say that this regular animal wants to watch the world burn, which unintentionally describes the Indominus more in terms of characterization, none of that is shown in its portrayal, and it's probably for the better because that always sounded dumb anyways. Side note, despite everything Colin Trevorrow said in regards to the Giganotosaurus being like the Joker, he revealed that the only similarity to the Joker that this dinosaur has is facial markings that are meant to be similar to the Joker's makeup. I genuinely cannot take Trevorrow seriously anymore after hearing all of this. To summarize its portrayal, in the cut prologue for Dominion, the Giganotosaurus is seen 65 million years in the Cretaceous, somehow being around for far longer than it realistically should be, fighting and killing a Tyrannosaurus in an attempt to set up a rivalry between the two theropods, despite the fact that the rivalry doesn't work when the present-day dinosaurs are clones that wouldn't share the memories of their prehistoric counterparts. I don't think I'd even have to elaborate in great detail over the fact that Giganotosaurus went extinct way before Tyrannosaurus appeared, and that it was never present in North America, unless the prologue is meant to be in South America, in which case T-Rex never existed in South America. In the final film, the Giga, or Zeb as it's apparently named in the movie, cringe, is brought up to be in the Biosyn Valley early on, giving us a brief glimpse of it resting as a Moros approaches it, which I guess is meant to be a parallel to the prologue, where a Moros feeds on bits of meat stuck in its teeth like a plover to a crocodile. It appears a second time when Owen, Claire, and Kayla reach the valley where it fights off Rexy and steals a dead deer from her. Speaking of which, just like in Jurassic World, Rexy barely appears in the film, with this scene technically being her first appearance if you exclude the prologue. It then appears at the climax when the facility is set on fire, attacking the protagonists before engaging both Rexy and a Therizinosaurus in a very contrived and disappointing fight before being killed. And we're supposed to be glad? When it comes to the non-hybrid dinosaurs, the reason it was satisfying when the Velociraptors died in the first film and the Spinosaurus was driven off in the third film is because they were not only built up early on as a serious threat to the characters, but we also had plenty of scenes with them that showcase just how dangerous they are. Same thing applies to the hybrids, even if the Indoraptor in particular is especially shit. But this Giganotosaurus barely has any build-up and acts more as an obstacle like the T-Rex did in the first 2 Jurassic Park films. You can replace the Giganotosaurus with Rexy or a rival T-Rex and nothing would change. Rexy herself also felt like an afterthought and ultimately felt like she was just there because the movies need a T-Rex. Same thing applies to the Buck and Doe from The Lost World that don't show up until the end, despite it being stated in the movie that the Isla Sorna dinosaurs were transported to the Biosyn Valley before the mainland ones. Knowing all of this, this is how I would fix the Tyrannosaurus and the Giganotosaurus in Dominion. For starters, in regards to the prologue, I'd keep the second half of it in the final film where Rexy is being chased by park rangers, while ultimately cutting the Cretaceous segment altogether because I refuse to establish an ancient rivalry between the two theropods. It's a dumb concept no matter how you try to justify it, especially for a series like Jurassic Park. At most, if I decide to keep the Prehistoric segment, I'd probably just have a proper depiction of the late Cretaceous showing Rexy's original counterpart hunting a Triceratops, and maybe show a segment of Giganotosaurus in Cretaceous Argentina prior, because I have to admit, despite the otherwise broken ecosystem we were showcased in the prologue, this was our first look at the prehistoric world in a Jurassic Park movie, and I suppose it would be kinda wrong to rob the viewers and fans of the opportunity to see that. So anyways, Rexy is captured and brought over to the Biosyn Valley in Italy, where she coexists with the other relocated dinosaurs, including the Buck and Doe from The Lost World. Maybe even have the juvenile fully grown and with a mate, but I don't know. I think it would just be easier to focus on the 3 Tyrannosaurs that were in the final film. For Rexy, having spent years on Isla Nublar as the only member of her species, is seeing other T-Rexes for the first time in her life, and she attempts to interact with them more. This helps to give Rexy and the mated pair more to do in the film instead of just being things to fill the background. There's an entire story arc given to Rexy without anthropomorphizing her, showing her trying to socialize with other Rexes and to potentially join them as a sort of hunting party or pack, especially as her increasing age would start to impact her ability to hunt. Simultaneously, Biosyn, with the help from Dr. Wu, has cloned a Giganotosaurus and released it with the other dinosaurs. With the ancient rivalry being largely ignored, I want to have a more grounded approach with how the Giga is portrayed in the film. Wu mentions how he used the Giga's DNA as well when creating the Indominus, citing its greater size to the T-Rex, and how it too was an apex predator during its time, making the rivalry more of a guessing game as to which theropod is going to outcompete the other, as they both fill the same niche and would come to blows once their hunting grounds overlap. This might require for Wu to maintain an antagonistic role, though he could gradually develop a change of heart over the course of the story. The stakes become high for Rexy as she's still left to fend for herself, and the younger and more energetic Giga becomes an omnipresent threat for her as she tries to survive. It takes her food, pushing her out of the way and claiming more of her territory, all the while Rexy gradually tries to form a bond with the Lost World pair. I wouldn't even have the Giga's power be described purely through an exposition dump. I'd try to properly show the Giganotosaurus as much as possible before the climax, though that might be a tad difficult because of how much story-wise already goes on in the movie to the point where there really isn't any breathing room. Aside from the Indominus, we never saw another large theropod take down a sauropod in the films, and due to Giganotosaurus and its relatives being rather infamous for hunting sauropods, you can perhaps show the Giga kill or attempt to kill a juvenile Dreadnoughtus or Apatosaurus. You could also have it briefly chase and try to kill the OG cast when they escape from the Dimetrodon cave, but admittedly that could be a bit much and could easily be removed. Some might notice that this Giganotosaurus is acting pretty much the same as it does in the final film, however this would obviously be more intentional instead of only happening because of the director's borderline incompetence. After the Therizinosaurus scene and before Claire's encounter with the Dilophosaurus, we could have a quick scene where we see a desperate Rexy approaching the pair from Claire's perspective. The climax could play out mostly the same, leading up to a final battle between Rexy and the Giga that is choreographed with the same level of competence as in JP3 or Jurassic World than what we actually ended up getting. This time, instead of one settling the score for an event in the late Cretaceous that none of them realistically experienced or would even be able to remember, this is the deciding factor of which apex predator would reign supreme. The T-Rex, who has been the dominant predator since the first park was built, or the Giga, the new, younger, and far larger predator who has been trying to usurp her and is pretty much succeeding. During the fight, while Rexy gives it her all, she's ultimately defeated by the Giga and it prepares to kill her, just as though Lost World pair arrived to assist her instead of a Therizinosaurus that was within hearing range of the fight and only decided to participate when a flare was shot in its general direction. The Giganotosaurus would not stand still in one spot and make itself easy to kill. Instead, it's going to attempt to fight all 3 T-Rexes at once upon realizing that it can't escape. Each time it manages to successfully knock one down, it gets attacked by another until it is eventually overwhelmed, with Rexy being the one to deliver the killing blow. Once the Giga has been killed, Rexy is finally accepted by the buck and doe. If they still wanted to have a Therizinosaurus fight, maybe have it before the Giga engages Rexy, cause I'd imagine that in a scenario where there's a forest fire and they're being forced to hide in a place with significantly less space, the already agitated and stressed animals would probably start fighting amongst each other, which could cause the Giga and Therizinosaurus to come to blows with one another. This type of climax, at the very least, seems to be something that a lot of people agree on. Having all 3 T-Rexes work together would have been the logical approach, and honestly, if Trevorrow thought to put the buck and doe in Dominion, why did he not consider doing this instead of having Rexy and Therizinosaurus team up against the Giga? I get that Therizinosaurus was a new dinosaur and they wanted to showcase it, but that scene in the swamp was good enough. At least with this, you can have the 3 Rexes fighting together as a family unit, instead of just having Rexy and the Theri be in mutual agreement about killing the Giga, and what could probably be best described as the 2 being massive supporters of theropod eugenics. I guess the T-Rex is just as racist as the man that named it. I don't think this would be enough to save the film's writing overall, but I like to think that it fixes the T-Rexes and the Giganotosaurus' role in the film. The Giga is given more of a reason to be there and is treated like a major threat that it was always supposed to be without going the ancient rivalry or Joker route, and there is an entire arc dedicated to the 3 Tyrannosaurs with a payoff in the final battle, instead of a Therizinosaurus offering support, or as some people have suggested, having a Spinosaurus assist Rexy in an honestly worse version of the Batman vs Superman or Godzilla vs Kong final battle. Some have even suggested replacing the Giganotosaurus with Spinosaurus, and while that would work, I'm honestly at a point where I feel like if the script was developed a bit more, then Jurassic Park 3 could have actually been a proper conclusion to the film series, especially after seeing each Jurassic World film get progressively worse with its writing. This is also a topic I plan to cover in this series eventually. It's not perfect by any means, some aspects of this could be fixed, but it is at least something compared to what we actually get in the final product. Also, if the Biosyn dinosaurs are said to not be tampered with and are as authentic to their prehistoric counterparts as possible, how awesome would it have been to see a more novel, accurate Dilophosaurus? I know the frilled one is iconic for the franchise, but come on. A bit more similar in size to the actual animal, plus being yellow with black spots like a leopard and having red crests? In a trilogy where they just brought in Dino Croc and slapped the name Baryonyx onto it, this would have probably been one of the best looking animals in the trilogy, and Jurassic World definitely needed a lot of good looking dinosaurs. Sure, we got Carnotaurus, Allosaurus, but then we got really bland Apatosaurus, Triceratops, and Kylosaurus. I don't think I even need to go over how ugly Baryonyx and Sinoceratops look.